Good afternoon, everyone. The University of Cambridge, the University of Cambridge is deeply honored to welcome the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, and His Excellency Ambassador Martin Fraser on this very special occasion. Welcome. It's wonderful that Trinity College is hosting today's event, and fitting that this occasion is taking place in a college where Robert Erskine Childers and his son, Erskine Hamilton Childers, figures who played key roles in Ireland's modern political history, were once students. The university has received long-standing and generous support from the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs, which previously funded a lectureship in modern Irish history. This makes the present moment particularly significant as we celebrate the landmark gift from the Government of Ireland to endow the Childers Professorship of Irish History, named in recognition of our two Trinity Childers. This generous commitment demonstrates a shared dedication to advancing the study of Irish history at Cambridge and to strengthening British-Irish academic collaboration. An exciting aspect of this post is that it builds on and contributes to a vibrant international community studying Irish history, including Trinity College Dublin, Edinburgh, Notre Dame, and Queen's University Belfast. Cambridge has a long tradition of scholarship in Irish history, including the work of Nicholas Manser, J.J. Lee, David Fitzpatrick, Paul Bew, John Morrell, Brendan Bradshaw, Claire Wills, Eamon Duffy, and, among colleagues currently in the history faculty, Eugenio Biagini, Richard Bourke, and Niamh Gallagher, who are with us this afternoon. Professor Gallagher is currently leading a Future Leaders Fellowship project on Ireland and the ends, plural, of the British Empire. This is an extremely exciting project that illustrates the real scale and depth of intellectual activity in Irish history here at Cambridge. It's not just a single initiative, but a rich and interconnected set of scholarly conversations. At its core are long-standing and well-attended seminars in modern Irish history, which continue to provide a vital forum for debate and exchange. These are complemented by major public-facing events, including the Brian Lenihan Memorial Lectures, which have brought leading voices in Irish history to Cambridge. We also benefit from dedicated institutional support through initiatives such as the Horkin Visiting Fellowship at Sydney Sussex College, which enables sustained engagement with visiting scholars, and the work of the Cambridge Group for Irish Studies, which fosters interdisciplinary collaboration across the university. Further strength comes from the Parnell Lectures and Fellowship linked to Magdalen College, which reinforce Cambridge's profile as a center for serious scholarship in Irish political and historical studies. This intellectual vitality is also reflected in Cambridge's leadership on major international conferences. So, for example, in 2016, the Faculty of History convened the Conference on the Easter Rising in a Global Perspective, situating Irish history within wider international and comparative frameworks. And more recently, in 2025, the faculty led a major conference marking the 40th anniversary of the 1985 British-Irish Agreement, underlining the contemporary relevance of historical scholarship and its role in shaping how we understand the present. Taken together, these activities demonstrate that Irish history at Cambridge is not only active and well-established, but intellectually ambitious, outward-looking, and deeply engaged with both historical and contemporary questions. Finally, we're delighted to announce that following a worldwide search and a very strong pool of candidates, Professor Alvin Jackson has been successfully appointed as the new Childers Professor of Irish History and will join us in the next academic year. He will also join us here in a few minutes. But before that, I would like to hand over to the Taoiseach, and then we will have a couple more speakers after that. So. Sir.
Vice-Chancellor, Ambassador, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, bhfuil mar dúspáire ará go priviléid anmhór domsa mar Taoiseach bheith eláthar seo chun an tionscanmh táchtach starúil seo a chuir fiáin seoil go hifigiúil. So in our Gaelic language, I've just expressed how much a privilege it is for me to be here at the official launch of this very important and historic initiative. It's a particular pleasure to be with you today for the announcement of the first holder of the Childers Professorship in Modern Irish History. In Professor Alvin Jackson, the University of Cambridge has chosen a historian of the very highest rank. His body of work is broad and involves essential contributions on many of the issues which have defined Irish and British history over the past 2 centuries. Democracy, rebellion, national identity, popular sovereignty, and the fate of multi-state unions. These are big themes, and he has made a major contribution on each of them, as well as on other areas. He has also taught in universities in different parts of these islands and has shown the benefit of the perspectives which this enables. His commitment to making history accessible to the public and to participating in public debates has been tireless. I have followed Alvin's work for many years. In fact, 27 years ago, as the then Minister for Education, I launched the first edition of his Survey of Modern Irish History. And this book quickly established itself as an essential text because of its rigour, balance and style. For me, its success marked an important moment in moving Irish historiography on from debates of previous decades. It also passed the most important test of a work of real scholarship. It presented the opinion of the author while also empowering readers to make up their own minds. When the first edition was published, the book's subtitle was Politics and War. Last year, when the third edition came out, the subtitle was War, Peace and Beyond. Reflected in this, you see how perspectives can evolve during a quarter of a century. The signing of the Good Friday Agreement was a moment of great anticipation for the future we could build within Northern Ireland, within the island of Ireland as a whole, and between Ireland and Great Britain. It was the first time in our history where there was an agreed approach to governance and to deciding constitutional issues. It was a triumph for those who never wavered in their support for democracy, and it was most of all an act of hope. As Seamus Mallon, one of the most important nationalist voices for peace, so brilliantly put it, the agreement was a new dispensation. The absence of war was precious, but we also carried a responsibility to create a new and exciting future. In truth, when you look back at the years since then, it's hard not to see the number of missed opportunities for progress and the fundamental failure to do the hard work of trying to build the understanding, engagement and reconciliation which we all aspire to. By nearly every measure, we are in a better place today than we were during the campaigns of violence which scarred our island for over 30 years. Yet we should be deeply concerned about our failure to address lasting sectarianism and deep economic disadvantage. We have done little to develop a sense of Irishness, our history, our shared interests, and our future, which is more than a cover version of old orthodoxies. No one could look at the ways in which certain groups use our flag, or their aggression towards those who do not toe the ideological line, and fail to worry about the damage which this might cause in the years ahead. Equally, we have every reason to be concerned about changes to the relationship between these islands. The negative impact of Brexit and other developments have been undeniable over the past decade, making it a priority to restructure and rebuild old relationships. The funding of a permanent professorship of modern Irish history here in Cambridge is part of a wider purpose. It is a practical demonstration of our commitment to addressing long-term concerns. To be more specific, in funding this professorship, we are in part addressing our wider objectives of strengthening the ties between Ireland and Britain at a time when we could so easily drift apart, demonstrating the growing importance of rigorous, independent historical scholarship when these values are under threat, and finally, honouring figures who made important contributions to Irish history and who remind us to see the complexity which has always been the reality of Irish society and the various sets of relationships. To start with the first objective, The impact of Brexit on Ireland and Irish-British connections was always going to be, the impact of Brexit was always going to be negative in terms of our relationships. It was one of the many issues which were brushed aside during the referendum campaign here. Our countries joined the now European Union on the same day. For nearly half a century, Europe provided a forum for deep and ongoing discussion and cooperation between us. Irish and British diplomats and ministers saw each other as a first port of call when trying to understand and address issues. We were always perhaps more positively disposed to the European Union and frankly generally more constructive, but we had a close and productive relationship with the United Kingdom, which was crucial when we turned to bilateral issues. In every ministerial role I held before Brexit, the relationship with my counterpart in London was my closest international connection. This was the same for all of my colleagues, and it was effectively wiped out, certainly significantly undermined by Brexit. In Northern Ireland, the impact of Brexit was particularly serious. For 4 decades, Europe had been a forum where politicians from Northern Ireland could share an agenda. The alignment of standards and laws between all states also reduced differences between North and South. Crucially, the freedoms central to European Union membership, as well as the framework of European law, helped to reduce uncertainty and increase faith in institutions. Europe is part of the DNA of the Good Friday Agreement. Repeated references in the various texts which enacted the agreement stressed how Europe gave a context in which to reduce differences. Separately, the European Convention on Human Rights, which both of our countries remain signatories to, provides the context for securing the cross-community legitimacy of courts and other institutions. Therefore, it has been a core priority for me to construct new ways of securing relations between our governments, and also to be clear on the commitments we each made when securing peace and which remain unaffected. I'm pleased to say that there has been real progress, and we're seeing close and constructive relations between our governments. Prime Minister Sunak, in fairness, marked a clear departure from the years immediately after the referendum, when he took important steps to solve lingering issues around the Brexit settlement. Prime Minister Starmer has shown himself to be a true friend of active, strong and constructive relations between our countries. His commitment to avoiding a drift towards reduced engagement and growing differences has been absolutely clear. And together, we have begun formal annual summits and have instructed our governments to increase ongoing engagement. We have looked for ways to protect and expand the sort of social, economic and cultural exchange which our peoples should take for granted. I warmly welcome the decisions of Prime Minister Starmer to ensure that Britain is now a full participant in Horizon Europe and Erasmus. These decisions will help reinforce long-standing and important connections between our universities and researchers. I'm also determined that we end the complacency which developed concerning relations within the island of Ireland. The Shared Island Initiative, which I launched in 2020, represents the first sustained effort to invest in promoting growth, understanding and reconciliation north and south. Backed by a financial commitment of €2 billion, not only are we literally building roads and bridges between communities, we are also funding work to more fully understand our societies and economies. This is examining what we share, where we differ, and the progress we can achieve when working together. Education is a core part of this, as is major funding for research in universities and institutes. I believe we need fewer people singing about old certainties and more people who are willing to find new perspectives. Overcoming entrenched views of others is an unrealised and essential step towards sustained progress. In funding universities, from undergraduate teaching to frontiers research, our own universities are of course, our priority. Higher education is a public good, without which you cannot sustain a successful society or economy. Without it, you cannot hope to meet the many profound challenges which the modern world keeps producing. As such, my government will continue to implement a programme to invest in both access and quality in our institutions. Our decision to support the establishment of this professorship in Cambridge is informed by our belief in the power of higher education and the urgency to ensure that our countries respond to these times by acting to deepen and secure our connections. It is also a signal of our belief in the central importance of independent historical scholarship in protecting core democratic values. The most destructive development of recent times has been the growth of populist sentiment and polarised information environments. As recent research conducted in Cambridge has shown, the impact of strengthened group loyalties is reducing the ability to think outside of rigid frames. Through much of the world, we are seeing an assault on forums and scholarship which question fixed views or which demand complexity. Even in secure democracies, we see efforts to stereotype and dismiss the importance of disciplines which are not deemed practical enough. The discipline of history has been a particular target. The most extreme example is seen with the neo-imperialist Putin regime in Russia. Having essentially banned all historical work which pointed to dark points in Russia's history, they now routinely terrorize and jail people who point out historical realities like the brutality of state repression under communism or the destruction of the historic Tatar culture of the Crimean Peninsula. In its place, they are promoting a pseudo-history which brings to mind Orwell's description of a nightmare world in which the leader or some ruling clique controls not only the future, but the past. This is no less than a Potemkin-like historical vision where you must accept a facade of unbroken righteousness and loyalty, while any who look behind will be punished. A less aggressive but still deeply serious questioning of the right to challenge narratives or even bring new perspectives to how we see history is now found through much of the world. State-led revisionism is seen in attempts to reopen old issues, reinvigorate the idea of national enemies, and to define national identity through allegiance to a particular understanding of the past. In other contexts, we are seeing attempts to caricature and undermine scholarship which is conducted in good faith, by labelling it reactionary or woke or any number of other labels. The dismissive use of these labels is intended to stifle debate, not empower it. This goes to the very core of democratic values. And for me, democracy requires far more than just holding elections. It requires the rule of law, active respect for diverse opinions, protection of the ability to raise questions, and a rejection of the idea that to be part of the polity, you must conform to a set narrative. Further, I believe that the strongest democracies and the most sustainable societies are those which embrace the importance of diversity and complexity. Without the humanities, this is impossible, and history has a fundamental role to play. In truth, the nature of the new challenges to democratic values is such that the study of history may be more important than ever. In 1943, when reflecting on the rapid revision of history to serve immediate needs, Orwell wrote, "The very concept of objective truth is fading out of the world. Lies will pass into history." Unlike other comments of his, I actually find this one to be reassuring. This is because 83 years later, we can see that a sense of the possibility of objective truth, or at least the importance of verifiable evidence, was capable of reasserting itself. A key part of this was that we had a diverse and independent community of scholars committed to exploring both traditional topics and new perspectives on the past. In Ireland, as in many parts of the world, debates on the writing of history have often been heated, but the very fact that there have been debates has spoken to the importance and health of the profession. For us, it has been an essential balance against a society which has often rushed to see in everything what Richard Burke has termed the myths of continuity and composition. Anne Dolan of Trinity College, Dublin, has commented that as a historian, she is luckier than politicians, who can seem, she says, compelled to see if the past can fix us. And I'm blunt enough to think we only have ourselves to blame for what happens now. I'm particularly struck by another comment of hers that historians should embrace the challenge to make it harder to be so certain and so shrill. This is not to say that we forget that a diverse colour palette includes elements of black and white. For example, no credible scholarship could ever oblige the Irish people to think better of Oliver Cromwell. Indeed, most of us are also unlikely to ever change our mind concerning the decision of the founder of this college to declare himself King of Ireland. I believe that the best historical research emerges through both adherence to distinct methods and an active engagement with other disciplines. And for me, it is hard to understand the Irish famine without considering the economic issues so brilliantly studied by Trinity's former Master and Nobel Laureate, Amartya Sen. Support for a diverse, rigorous and accessible body of historical scholarship should be a much greater priority for democratic governments, even at a time of stretched budgets. Our support for this professorship is one demonstration of our commitment to this. We also have a responsibility to show that it is possible to commemorate historical figures and movements without seeking to impose fixed views on the past. Erskine Childers and his son Erskine Hamilton Childers are important figures in the establishment and success of an independent Irish state. They were both members of the Anglican faith who were born and educated in England. This included taking degrees here in Trinity. Neither of them was a cultural nationalist, holding a broader view of what defined a nation. They also both married exceptional women whose spirits and intellects were undeniable. Indeed, they got blamed often for the particular views of their husbands, which is not something that's not unprecedented from time to time. Erskine served as a clerk in the House of Commons and as an officer in the Boer War. His major work of fiction, an early spy thriller called The Riddle of the Sands, was a bestseller and has never been out of print. Once converted to the cause of Irish republicanism, he became one of its foremost advocates in articles and pamphlets, and he and his wife Molly transported most of the guns used in the 1916 Rising to Dublin in their yacht. Elected to Dáil Éireann and appointed to lead the Secretariat for negotiations with Lloyd George's government, Erskine ultimately opposed the Treaty of 1921. He did so for many reasons, with the most important being that he felt it was not a settlement which could unite the Irish people. His death was one of the great tragedies of the Irish Civil War. Arrested at a moment when the government had decided to ignore both new and established laws, he was executed for owning a small revolver which had been given to him by Micheál Collins as a keepsake. And of course, Micheál Collins, the most significant figure for supporters of the treaty. Erskine Hamilton shared his father's republicanism, but he, like the dominant majority of Irish people, was committed to democratic means. Also a member of Dáil Éireann, he held 4 ministerial roles, including the office of Taoiseach, or Deputy Prime Minister. He was a moderniser and an internationalist, and he enthusiastically campaigned for membership of the European Economic Community, as was then known. When he was elected to serve as president, he began the process for opening up the office, and he actively engaged with different strands of Irish society. As a Protestant head of a state with a large Catholic majority, he had an important voice in the shared rejection of the violence and sectarianism which were then escalating in the north. His death, little more than a year after taking up office, was a great national shock. Erskine and Erskine Hamilton Childers are personalities who deserve our respect and they reward our engagement. They ultimately speak to the remarkable complexity and interconnections which you find within Irish society and in our relationship with Britain. They are a reminder that you cannot understand Irish history if you try to impose crude assumptions about religion or class. An example of the dynamic nature of connections and change through our history can be seen when you consider one of the portraits on the staircase outside of this room. It shows Charles Villiers Stanford, an important Irish composer whose church music remains a mainstay of colleges and cathedrals around the world a century after his death. He was a long-serving organist of this college, a post he held during the early part of Erskine Childers' time here. Unlike Childers, Stanford was born and educated in Dublin. He wrote major works on Irish themes and had an international success with a comic opera entitled Seamus O'Brien, which gave a sympathetic portrayal of a participant in the 1798 rebellion. In response to the later Home Rule debates and then 1916 and War of Independence, Stanford backed away from the centrality of a broad Irishness in his identity, even refusing to allow performances of Seamus O'Brien. He had become a loud and inflexible voice for unionism by the time his portrait was painted by William Orpen, also a Dubliner and one of the greatest portrait artists of the early 20th century. The commemoration of the Childers through the endowment of a professorship in modern Irish history is, I believe, a fitting memorial from a grateful state to their spirit and an invitation for us to look deeper into Irish history. The professorship will not create Irish history in Cambridge. As has been said, there is a long tradition of Cambridge historians writing important works in the field. Rather, it will guarantee and expand this tradition. It will help research students and will provide an opportunity to find new directions for cooperation across different disciplines. Irish scholars and Irish topics are to be found throughout the university. I value the very close link which many of our researchers have with Cambridge. Irish studies are highly active here. The Parnell Fellowship brings an important public intellectual to Cambridge each year, and I want to acknowledge the work of Eamon Duffy. As well as being one of the most significant recent historians of religion, he has been at the centre of promoting Irish studies. During her time here building a temporary lectureship funded by the Irish government, Niamh Gallagher made a very important contribution. Her work on the social and political impact of the First World War is a groundbreaking text, and I look forward to the output of her latest project on Ireland and the end of empires. The idea for this endowment was raised with me through the initiative of Richard Burke and Eugenio Biagini on behalf of the Faculty of History. I would like to thank them in particular for the comprehensive and professional way in which they made it easy for me to support this proposal. Both of them are renowned scholars who have put an immense effort into an initiative which will benefit generations to come. We are very lucky to have a dynamic and highly innovative team in our embassy in London under the leadership of Ambassador Martin Fraser. They know the university well and made important inputs to this proposal. Similarly, I would like to acknowledge the work of my own staff in the Department of Taoiseach, and in particular the officials of the Department of Foreign Affairs, who together shepherded it through government and Parliament so quickly. The fact that the relevant parliamentary committee of Dáil supported the endowment without objection reflects the quality and importance of the idea. Finally, I would like to acknowledge two people who are no longer with us, but who should be remembered today. Brendan Bradshaw was a long-standing history lecturer here and a Fellow of Queen's College. He was a forceful advocate of his positions in historical debate, but equally known for his kindness and encouragement to generations of young researchers, irrespective of their outlooks. At a conference marking the bicentenary of the 1798 rebellion, he mentioned to me his concern about the lack of a permanent place for Irish history here. I know he would be pleased that others have succeeded in creating this place. My late friend and colleague Martin Mansur was son of Nicholas Mansur, the first Cambridge Professor of Commonwealth History and Master of St. John's College. Like the Childers, the Mansurs are a Protestant family with a long and rich tradition of education in England and service to Ireland. Martin was a diplomat, advisor, senator, Dáil deputy and minister. He is most widely known for his critical role in the earliest and most sensitive stages of the peace process. When he passed last year, he had been spending much of his time here in Cambridge preparing his father's papers for publication. He was a strong supporter of the creation of this professorship and was looking forward to this event. Martin would have been as pleased as I am to find that not only has the professorship been established, but also that its first holder is a historian of such distinction as Alvin Jackson. As I have said, this is a time when we need to protect and strengthen bonds between our countries. It is a time when we need to assert the importance of diverse, rigorous and independent historical scholarship. It is a time when we should do more to honour figures who can challenge us to see the richness and complexity of our past. This professorship is a small but important demonstration of the commitment of the Irish Government to addressing these challenges. I thank you again for the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to tracing the impacts of the Childers Professorship in the years ahead. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Taoiseach for a marvelous address. So now we are going to hear from our new professor, Childers Professor of Irish History, Professor Alvin Jackson. And then after he's finished, we'll hear briefly from the head of the history faculty, Professor Lucy Delap. But first, Professor Jackson.
Taoiseach, Vice-Chancellor, colleagues, Taoiseach, as indeed you mentioned in your very generous remarks, I last had the privilege of speaking at the same podium as you when you were Minister for Education and when you very kindly launched a book of mine at University College Dublin. Then, as now, you took time out of a very, very busy schedule to signal your support for the work of the universities. And as a published historian yourself, you took time to signal your recognition of the importance of history as a discipline and the importance of Irish history in particular. I thank you sincerely for all of that, both then and for now. As you have said, Taoiseach, the Childers family is very much in our minds today, given both the title of the new chair and our own current backdrop here in Trinity. Collectively, the Childers span an arc from empire and unionism in 1900 through Home Rule and republicanism to, by the end of the 20th century, a proactive internationalism. Robert Erskine Childers, as you've reminded us, started life as a defender of empire, but ended it as a lastingly iconic figure within modern Irish republicanism. Erskine Hamilton Childers, Uachtaráin na hÉireann, sought to address some of the deep divisions in the island in the 1970s, and especially those separating north and south. As you've reminded us, Taoiseach, these were both Irish Protestants seeking to work alongside their Catholic and other fellow citizens in the building and the imagining of a new and better Ireland. The President's son, Erskine Barton Childers, sought through his work at the United Nations to address the legacies of colonialism and other issues of global injustice. And again, as you've reminded us, Taoiseach, the lives of these successive members of the Childers family embody something of the complexity and the fluidity of political relations within individual families in Ireland, on the island itself, and in terms of the relationship between Ireland and Britain. They speak eloquently to the inadequacy of neat or simplistic narratives across modern Irish history. Election to this chair is, of course, a huge personal honour, but far, far more important, the chair now ensures a permanent and a central place for the teaching of Irish history and its research in this world-famous university, and in particular the study of the relationship, the complex relationship between the two islands, Ireland and Britain. The endowment of this chair will ensure that the great tradition of Irish history at Cambridge, which has been mentioned, is sustained for future generations. This is a tradition which has been enriched by the close interconnection of Cambridge and the different Irish universities. It's a tradition which, taking the second half of the 20th century alone, has embraced such eminent scholars as Oliver MacDonagh and J.J. Lee, who studied here and who returned to teach at your home university, Taoiseach, University College Cork. It embraces scholars like Ronan Fanning and James Maguire, as it happens, friends and mentors, who studied here and who returned to teach at University College Dublin. As has been said, it has embraced scholars like Nicholas Manser, a former Smuts professor and father of the very distinguished Irish public servant Martin Manser. It's a tradition which has included leading Celticists and medievalists, such as Professor Maura Ní Moinnig, as well as distinguished early modernists, such as Professor Eamon Duffy, who each have done so much to build up the Cambridge Group for Irish Studies, as well as the Parnell Fellowship. The tradition of modern Irish history at Cambridge has been decisively re-energized and reimagined through the great gifts and the great energy of Professor Eugenio Biagini, joined more recently by the very eminent historian of political thought, Professor Richard Burke. It's a tradition which is being strengthened and supported by Dr. Niamh Gallagher, whose important work has, as we've heard, also been supported in the past by the Irish government. The Childers Endowment ensures the continuation of this great and constructive tradition for generations yet to come. It is indeed a huge honour now to be part of this lineage and this community, and to have the opportunity to work with such talented and distinguished colleagues in carrying the study of Irish history at Cambridge forward into the future. And I owe this opportunity. Collectively, we owe this disciplinary opportunity to the generosity and far-sightedness of the Government of Ireland through this Childers Endowment. Thank you so much, Taoiseach. Thank you to Vice-Chancellor and colleagues.
Guests, Vice-Chancellor, Taoiseach, Ambassador, Professor Jackson, it's my pleasure today to draw the events to a close and direct you to the next section, which will be some drinks at the back. Today has been a very exciting day, launching a post that will... a slip. Days can have many aspects. Launching a post that will exist in perpetuity and welcoming the first Childers Professor. We're absolutely honoured to be able to do that in the presence of the Taoiseach and to have in Professor Jackson an appointee whose research has already done so much to lead and to shape understanding of the history of Ireland and Britain in European and in global perspective. The vision of the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Government of Ireland, written into the remit of this post of deeper understanding between the peoples of these islands, is one that really inspires us today, that vision of history and the humanities as a force that can complicate and can offset shrillness and certainty. That will really live on in my mind from the Taoiseach's speech. And it's extraordinary to think that what we're launching today will persist for decades and centuries to come. The faculty and the university are deeply, deeply grateful. I'd like to thank some of the figures who have made this possible. We've heard today already how extraordinary the work has been of colleagues in Irish history and Irish studies here. I would also like to note, in particular, Eugenio Biagini, Richard Burke, and Niamh Gallagher, who are such wonderful, exceptional colleagues in Irish history. I'm also particularly grateful to my colleagues in Development and Alumni Relations, particularly Ros Griffin, Anna Bowden and Emma Robson, who have been running around to make everything work smoothly today, and that has been marvellous. It's been amazing to be able to launch this exciting new appointment in this amazing building. So I would like to thank Professor Louise Merritt, Dr. Nicholas Bell, and the whole Wren Library team. We are actually usurping their working space. They've very kindly given us access to the library and moved their workspace to allow us to celebrate in this special space that we know was known so well to the Childers' father and son. And there's an exhibition at the back. You'll see in some of the research cases there, archival material, sources relating to the Childers at the back of the library, and I hope you'll take the chance to have a look at that over a drink. So please do join us as we continue at the back to celebrate the Childers Professorship. Thank you.